Today I'm sewing and sharing the Poppy Top and Dress by Made for Mermaids. This pattern offers a lot of different options for the style of the sleeve and the length of the dress. It also offers a couple options for the depth of the neckline. I'm sewing my version of the dress today in a stretch mesh material, which adds a little bit of elegance to the dress, and I'm just wearing a slip underneath the dress so I don't have to bother with adding any lining to the actual garment. I've added a link to the pattern below so you can check out all the details, grab a copy, and sew along with me. So grab that pattern, cut out your fabric, mark your notches, and let's get started. Place your front and back pieces right sides together and pin your shoulder seams. Using your preferred stretch stitch or a serger, sew those shoulder seams with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. For the bottom hem of the flutter sleeve, you could choose to fold up that raw edge to the wrong side by 1/4 inch all the way across and use your preferred stretch stitch to edge stitch that raw edge in place all the way across. If you're doing the regular sleeve option, you'll fold that hem allowance to the wrong side by 1/2 inch and again edge stitch that raw edge in place on the inside all the way across. You could also leave these raw edges unfinished, as I'm going to be doing here. Here are my front and back bodice pieces with my sewn shoulder seam. I'm going to place that notched top edge of my sleeve right sides together with the arm side at the shoulder seam and pin in place. Then I'm going to continue pinning that sleeve head all around that arm side. Slightly stretching that fabric as needed so that both pieces fit together perfectly. Once you have both of your sleeves pinned in place, take it to your sewing machine and sew those sleeves to the bodice with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. My sleeves are attached and I'm ready to sew the side seams. Place your front and back pieces as well as your sleeves right sides together. Pin your side seams and underarm seams. And then use your preferred stretch stitch or your serger to sew these side seams and underarm seams with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, starting at the bottom of the bodice all the way to the bottom of the sleeves. Now for both of our center front edges, as well as the entire neckline, we're going to fold that material to the wrong side by 1/2 inch all the way around and press in place. With that material folded back 1/2 inch, we're going to take it to our sewing machine or cover stitch and sew close to that raw edge all the way around for a nice finish around your center front and neckline. On your front bodice pattern piece, you have a notch indicating your topmost button placement. I've placed pins here on either side of the bodice to indicate those button markings from my pattern piece. I'm going to pin my front bodices together using those button placement markings to know how far up the bodice to pin. Overlap your right bodice over your left or left over right, whichever you prefer, allowing the bodices to overlap by 1/2 inch. Now I'm going to take my pinned front bodices to the sewing machine and baste them together right in the middle of the overlap of those two front bodice pieces, from the top of the overlap to the bottom of the bodice. Now using a needle and thread, I'm going to sew my buttons in place. I'm going to place the first button according to the button placement marking on my pattern, just at the very top of the overlapping of the two bodice pieces. And then I'm just going to spread the rest of the buttons evenly down the bodice and sew them in place. Place your front and back skirt pieces right sides together and pin your side seams. And do this for both side seams. Take it to your sewing machine or serger and sew both side seams with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now with your bodice right side out and your skirt inside out, place the bodice inside the top of the skirt, matching the bottom of the bodice to the top of the skirt. Match your side seams and pin in place. Also match your center fronts and center backs and pin in place. And then continue pinning all the way around. Sew this waist seam all the way around with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm choosing to leave the bottom hem of my dress raw, just as I did for the ends of my sleeves. But if you'd like to hem the edges at the bottom of your dress, fold them up to the wrong side of the garment by 1/2 inch, and then using a zigzag stitch or cover stitch or a twin needle, sew close to that inner edge all the way around. And now you're all done with your dress. Thank you for watching this sew along. Make sure you check out my other videos for more great sewing tutorials, and I'll see you in the next video.